Tao, the Watercourse Way. This is the Wu Wei chapter.
Cool.
Mhm.
We are talking about trust, right? Yeah.
Talking about trust, yeah, and then so on the subject of like, which is really just trusting that even if people act out, it's just like what they need to get out of their system almost was that sort of the energy there. Like if you need to do that, go ahead and do it. I'll allow it. I won't resist it. And so even taking that as far as it could go, it's like somebody causes harm. There has to be a line at which you step in and like, I can't allow this to happen, if somebody's going to harm your loved ones or something. But you can still, I think this is a line from the Bhagavad Gita, like prepare for war with peace in your soul, so still have that same energy of like, I understand this is what you feel like you need to do to be happy, and I still care for you, but I'm not going to allow you to do this.
Prepare for war and keep peace in your soul sounds a lot like know the male, keep the female.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That sounds
Good.
the exact that's the first thing that came to mind when you said that.
Yeah, good observation. I like that.
Your friend's situation is actually very very like good to think about because when we talk about trust, we're often thinking in terms of trust like I trust that you won't do what I think you shouldn't do. But your friend's trust, he's not trusting that people won't take it, right? Because we could all agree that it would be wrong to take something, and by setting up trust that people will abide by our perception of what's right and wrong, is actually in a way a stressful trust. And so could we argue from this chapter that that's really the trust that's needed? Because your friend's trust is that everything, like that, whatever the outcome is, it's going to be okay. Like they get in my car, they take my CDs. Like, okay, he's not really trusting the person, but there's a greater sense of trust that like I am unharmed, and like there's not anything really being taken away in this situation.
Yeah.
It's just letting go of control, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I think we get anxious about those things. People taking from us, people doing us wrong, because it makes us feel out of control. So, and it's kind of funny because it makes me think about like other situations that have happened to me where I've always approached it as like somebody does something wrong to me, that person has to live with the wrongdoing, like I don't, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's helped me kind of get through tougher things. And you've lost trust in a person, just kind of helps let that go. It's like they're just doing them and I'm doing me, and I just have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
What does that mean, losing trust in a person? What does it like mean? Because what are you losing,
I think on that smaller interpersonal level, when you're engaging with someone routinely, the trust that's there is the trust that this person won't hold any intentions of ill will towards me. Yeah, I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if their actions betray that intention is there, and the intention is the critical part. If they hurt you and it's accidental, then okay, fine. That happens all the time. You smack them in the face and laugh and keep going. But if there's like real feeling that this person meant to cause you harm for whatever reason, maybe for personal gain or whatever, I think that's That's where it's like, now this thing is here, this intention, and I don't know if it'll ever, I can't trust that it'll never arise again. But then this larger sense of trust we're talking about is like, even if those bad intentions arise, you trust that it's all part of this larger process of unfolding. And maybe even summoning in the law of karma, which I know isn't really a Taoist thing. It's like this understanding, if people act from ill will, ultimately they're really hurting themselves, because it hurts to hold on to that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, because what is ill will? It's like I have, I want something that this person doesn't have, so I will destroy what this person has so that I can have what he has. But it's coming from a place of lack, right? It will
And
coming
pain.
from and pain. Underlying assumption, like pain is like a consequence of the lack, right? It's like an underlying assumption that there's a hole inside me that this person doesn't have, and the only way I can fill my hole is if I take away something from this guy, you know, which is like, it's not true though, which is why I think it causes pain and suffering. I don't think anyone lacks anything.
Well, yeah, the lack, I think, arises from sense of separateness, which again is delusion,
Sense
right?
of
That
what?
there's nothing really separateness.
Separateness, yeah.
Yeah, and so that there can be no separateness, because one thing I really liked from this chapter was his sort of depiction of the time lapse of larger systems. That if you sped things up and looked from a high enough point of view, that whole cities would just look like things on an organism crystallizing and then disappearing.
Yep.
Like that's really cool. And where was I going with that? I don't remember. What did I say right before that? Something about trust, right? Ill will. Man, I totally lost it.
He'll come back.
We'll move it, yeah, somewhere in the conversation.
Yeah, I did like that line, and it did connect to something, but
I thought it was pretty profound. A lot of what Watts gets at often is like a sort of unity between all things, and that we can really just look out in the world. And did you remember it? Are you still
that's
trying
what
to
it
remember?
was. Unity
really?
versus separateness.
I picked it up for you then.
Thank you.
You threw it up.
Synchronicity.
The assist.
Yeah, that there
Yes.
is no lack or separateness, because it's all just process, one
Right.
process unfolding.
It's the mutually arising detail, right? I posted a post from the Alan Watts subreddit, and I thought it was a very interesting question, because I like, anytime I talk to a friend or someone who's getting into these topics, it always comes up, and I think there's a lot to discuss of where this question comes from, but the question itself is just a good question. And what they asked is, if we are the universe experiencing itself, how does that fit with all the various personal struggles? And so, like, they're looking at the world as if there's something wrong with suffering and anxiety and pain. And while on one level, like on a not lower in the sense of less, but just lower in the sense of like perception, there is a problem with struggle and suffering
Yeah.
and anxiety. Like, there's a lot of problems. Like, it's painful. But with that zoomed back view that you're mentioning, Rave, it's not a problem in the sense of anything being out of line. It's just a problem in, because there's solutions to the problem. There's bad because there is good. There's this, it's like the polarity that we started out with in this book. And, just like, the polarity is not a fight between two things, it's a relationship between two things, and that relationship forms itself into like a process of things. And when viewed in that zoomed out view, like watching society crystallize with skyscrapers, I feel like it's the same thing with these problems of anxiety and joy and all those sorts of experiences.
Yeah, I think it comes down to if you are the universe experiencing itself. I think the fundamental problem is how we define our identity. You know, it's like if you define yourself to be a human in this physical realm inside this body, and there are other humans in this physical realm, then of course, then all these problems gonna come across. You know, but if you're like a universe, what problems would it have? Which mean, yeah, but then how can you identify? How can you for you to identify as a universe, you have to like let go of your identity that you're holding on to right now, you know, and that's hard because we have a lot of self bias or self what's the word,
Interest?
deception. No, we have like a lot of self deception, you know,
Oh, okay.
self deception mechanisms that make sure that you think you're a human, and all the self deception boils down to your need to survive, you know. Or if you think this way, then you wouldn't survive. This body wouldn't survive.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of rewards for that too in society,
yeah,
for having that identity. You were rewarded,
yeah.
kind of like how Ram Dass talks about the spacesuit. Like you
Mm.
use your spacesuit in a certain way, and people come by and say, "Nice suit, beautiful suit. I like that suit."
Yeah, yeah. We do go against the grain because I feel everyone wants to believe this because they kind of resonate somewhere in their heart, but they can't allow themselves to be it. You know, because then it will threaten their survival, and it's something very threatening about it.
Yeah, I think that's why there's such a concept of like the rebirth in so many different spiritual traditions, because you are kind of letting go of this identity. Um, and it's interesting because when you're in the real spiritual space, you're right back into like this multiple planes view where it's like I can, be the whole of it, or I can be my separateness individual. So it's not like you lose completely the idea that I'm an individual in a world. But what you lose is some of the like importance or like direness you used to place on the needs that you thought you had, and now they just seem a little less important. Um, yeah, and on the topic of, if we're the universe experiencing itself, what about suffering? He comes at that pretty directly towards the end of the chapter, where he talks about this little piece on, although pain is not real, when the point of a pin goes into my skin, I dislike what I fancy I feel.
Mhm.
So it's like, this is all an illusion, but maybe out of everything, pain feels the most real. And like, what are we to do about that?
Pain feels the most real. Yeah, I can say that.
And you also said something interesting, Vito, about like the grain and whether you're going against it. I think you said going against it. And so I think Taoism characterizes things as like when you start to align more spiritually, you're going with the grain. You become the stream flowing down
Yeah,
the mountain.
that's why the
And
concept of
one
moving.
part of that analogy,
Yeah,
one part of that analogy I really like that I've never heard before is that if the stream goes down and gets stuck, it just rises up and collects water until it goes over the next thing. That's really cool. I really like that twist on the analogy.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of Buddhist circles where teachers will characterize things as that the spiritual path is going against the stream. And what I think they're pointing to there is you're going against the stream of self-interested desires of your normal habits, right? You sort of have to step outside of that
yeah,
in order to be aligned. So I think it's what I've come to feel into is that this whole process is really just switching from one stream to another almost, or just realizing that one stream is part of another one. That like, you're just sort of carried about by your habits, desires, and fears. But then coming to spirituality, you're sort of letting go of that and just going more with the flow of nature, right? Just seeing how things are coming and going and not fighting it and just being with it.
Mhm.
But I thought that was an interesting point of like conflict in the analogies.
Yeah, I want to explore deeper into that analogy, like going with the flow. Like, how do you know when you're going with the flow? Because even though it's obvious, right? You know it's like a feeling that's associated, accompanying it. Yeah, it's very easy to like delude ourselves, thinking that, oh yeah, we are going in my flow. I'm getting more money. I have a better life. However, in that point, there's like a unconsciously you're going against the flow. Because you're building up a lot of desires, and it never fulfills you. Like there are so many stories of billionaires. Yeah, they have all this money. there's a and they feel not fulfilled. There's even a saying in among them, where no matter how big of a yacht you buy, always like a bigger yacht will, like, uh, park beside yours, no matter no matter how big of a yacht you buy. Yeah. And
Mhm.
there's always, I feel, as humans, we always judge or use the circumstance to indicate the fulfillment or lack within us. So you're looking at the external environment, and you're using that to gauge whether you lack something within you or whether you're fulfilled and content. You know, oh, I have the biggest yacht here, until someone else's bigger yacht comes and parks beside you, and now you feel the sense of lack. Damn, I don't have the biggest yacht. It's all like self-constructed. And no matter how much of a materialistic possession you acquire, there's something in you just doesn't fulfill. So there's like a delusion here where even when you're like making more money, you feel like everything is going with the flow, but secretly it's just building up. So how would someone know they're going with the flow or against the
I don't think it's a matter of knowledge.
flow?
A lot of this is expressed in feeling and
Yeah.
experience, and because like once you, I mean, it's a very good question. Like how do you know when you're flowing? Because it really by this line of thought, the moment that you know that you're flowing, well, you're flowing a little bit less.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
um, I I think, I mean, like I'm telling you, I think Rave's friend's example is so good. Because I think part of it is just knowing that you won't know. There's an absence of knowing in this sort of experience, and because like really, the follow up question, I like to imagine sometimes, because I've listened to so many of like Watts's like Q&A, and I really like his approach to how he answers questions. And so sometimes when I come up with questions, I try to imagine like how would this be like handled. Like, and so like you pose the question, how would you know if you're flowing, or if you're like you're on that
Sinking.
path?
Yeah.
I think the follow up question to me would be, why is it important for you to be there? Like, why has it been in your, like, why have you decided that's where you need to be? And to me, that's where it starts. Because the moment that you impose where you should be, there's usually like a motive behind that, and maybe even a motive behind that motive, and even behind
Yeah.
that, maybe something you're completely unaware of that's just been programmed.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so it's I feel that's kind of what makes me think like there is just an unknowing part of this, and that's where a lot of anxiety comes from, and that's where the trust aspect comes from. It's not about knowing. It's not about pointing your finger and saying that's where we are and this is here we are, whatever. Because once we're doing that, we're outside of it. Um,
It's like trusting that
flow
unknowing
that
part.
flow that knows flow is not true flow.
Oh my god. Write that down somewhere.
I mean, it's literally the first line of the
Yeah.
Tao Te Ching.
yep,
Nice.
You just
yep,
substitute flow for Tao.
yep. And he does that in his book. I
Oh.
think he writes it out in like several ways,
Yeah.
which is good.
So this just made me think like, because we talk about like you can't have pleasure without pain and all that polarity and different things. And I listened to that little piece of the lecture that you sent me, Boots, and he was talking about that you need the dark to see the stars. And it was really nice how he put that all together. But this just made me think about like, do you have to experience going against that flow to be able to experience the true flow? Like,
Yeah. When
you
do you
have to
experience?
have this like awareness experience, or could it be possible to just be with the flow from the get-go? I don't know if you need to experience that opposite feeling, because it seems like all of us have had those experiences, and it's natural to have those experiences where we're like forcing or trying to go against the suffering that might happen or try to prevent it. It kind of all brought us to this point. I'm just curious if it's like, almost a necessity to be able to experience that and recognize it in order to truly reach that flow.
That's making me wonder if it's possible not to experience that. Just being born with a human mind, that's where you're going to go almost immediately.
Yep.
Like once you're done being an infant and have a sense of self, like there it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doesn't that give you like a sense of like you can forgive yourself for that too? Because I think a lot of people get into this and they're like, oh my gosh, all these things that I've been trying to force and all this stuff. And you're like, that instinct is to feel almost guilty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's
It is like
point.
it's part of that journey that you take to reach true like flow experience.
I think
That's
sorry, go on.
I was going to say that's a well documented thing, at least in Buddhism. I'm reading a book right now that talks about people who go meditate seriously and undergo these spiritual transformations. It's very common to look back on your life and feel like the horror of like, wow, I can't believe I handled that situation like that. And like all the people you treated in certain ways, and can't believe I hit that person in kindergarten. Like it's just endless.
Are you reading my mind?
So
I'm
like,
just kidding.
I hit a person in
and so it's like your spiritual work at that point becomes the self-compassion of letting go of that. That's just part of it. It's just part of the unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like what Watts mentioned in this book, where he was talking about you mentioned it earlier too, Rave, about water just rising to overcome whatever was in front of it. So it's like all those moments feel like rocks in the river that the water's just maneuvering around, or when it comes up against the stone and it builds its own way through it. Like it's just this. Oh my gosh. What the heck?
What
Sorry. My dog it's actually
dog?
really
That's
funny.
nice.
My dog is laying on the vent, like the air vent, and he got up and his tag got caught and it pulled the whole vent out of the floor.
Oh my god.
So it's now hanging on his collar, so I have to figure out how to get it out of there. Sorry guys.
No,
It's
that's
okay.
fine. I think I kind of get it now. In the sense that I think we all flow it's like a birthright, everyone flows until you want it to flow a very specific way. You know what I mean? I mean, when you look at river, yeah, it picks a path of the least resistance and it just flows, and it creates a path, and now you have a river. But I feel the moment you expect this river to like flow in a straight line or flow in like a 90-degree angle, you know what I mean? Then that gets stuck. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to control something you can't really control. I think most of the stuff that resist like the flowing upwards really comes from you wanting it to flow a certain way or you expecting it to flow a certain way, but it's not flowing that way. Like who says that we are not supposed to hit kids when you're kindergartens and kids like that? You know what I mean? But there's an expectation set, right? Oh, you're not supposed to hurt kids.
Yep.
Which then causes suffering. You know what I mean? What do you guys
Yeah,
think of that?
interesting. Well, I'm interested by your use of the word birthright. I've heard a teacher say that like everyone has the birthright of being able to wake up, but that doesn't mean that people do it. You know, so you can just remain stuck. And there is a real stuck feeling, and even though those people are, you're sort of just that's how they're flowing, I guess, seen from a certain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I'm imagining like a whirlpool in the water that spins really furiously, and it's very uncomfortable from the perspective of the whirlpool, which is the person struggling. But it's still part of the river that's flowing, you know.
The question is, what
And
is
we've
this
all
river?
experienced whirlpool.
Yeah. In this analogy, what would be the river?
The river, I mean, this is where the analogy maybe breaks because the river is everything. There's nothing that's not river.
Yeah, I can see that. Do you feel the river could be like your story? You know, but then no, forget about
It's
that.
tricky because we only know river by two surrounding land masses, right? There's sides. That's how I think
Yeah,
that's like what this is basically what happens when we start getting into concepts, because all of our concepts require other concepts to make that
yeah,
concept.
yeah,
Yeah.
So
Anything you can name in this analogy is just part of the river flowing. It's just
exactly.
more of splashing, you know.
I think that makes sense, right? Because immediately what came in my mind is like I almost framed it in a way where it feels like you have no control. Oh, the river's gonna flow the way it's supposed to flow. Yeah, but there's also but that assumes like this hopelessness um underlying thingy, right? Where you can't expect stuff to go any way because it's gonna go the way it's gonna go, you know. But it doesn't mean that you don't have control over the situation. I feel like if you let go of the expectations, you can flow the way you want it to flow because of what you just mentioned. That river is everything. There's nothing in the river that is not the river. But recognizing that is what lets the river flow the way it wants to flow. Because if the river is everything, it's not stopping it to flow in any direction. You know what I mean? I think river stops flowing when you expect river to flow in a very specific direction. I don't know. What do you guys think? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Because
I mean, it's like how we started this trail of thought. I mean, once you uh direct your knowledge, like once you like a certain knowledge into this and like start, I guess, putting things on a scale of like higher and lower and like what's more important, what's not more important, what I know and what I don't know, all these things. Uh, it pulls you out of that flow. And it's just like how it's often, I mean, the extreme of this is the like what's been brought up maybe a couple times already in this book, but almost, I mean, so many times in Watt's lectures where it's like the goody goodies are thieves of virtue. It's like the extreme is someone is like saying I'm going to try to be good, like I'm going to do good things, and it just takes all the goodness out of it.
mm.
We've
Yeah.
we've talked about it in terms of love, right? Like
Yeah.
you find someone that you're very like that you're just attracted to them, and you love them and you want them to love you back. You want that reciprocation, but you don't want them to love you because you want them to love you. Like you just want them to naturally, innately love you with no influence on your own, but you're going to try to influence it.
Yeah. But that's what you
And
want
then,
though. Yeah.
right, I mean, but it's just interesting because this makes me think about I made a note somewhere. He talks about the more laws there are, the more thieves, because we're talking about politics and control and how control is uh, you know just eats up our energy. and how really all that control, like laws, creates the problems that we end up having, struggles with and end up discussing. I mean, technically, if you want to like be super literal about it, yeah, the more laws there are, the more criminals. Because like the more you say is wrong, and the more that you say this is how things should be, no matter like if someone were to say like, you could only, you know, jump on one leg to get around, like that's a silly law. But like if everyone started walking around, then everyone's a criminal. And if you apply this in a more like practical way, not so much dramatic, I think there's a lot that can be taken from that. So the more that you decide things should be a certain way, and Nina, that's a huge part of that video, where Watts talking about like how things must be, and how this is passed down through culture and religion and our view of God. But the more that we like put out these like pins of how things should be, the more wrong everything seems, and really
More
the more separate
suffering.
we feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we create our own in that way through that sort of perception. Um,
Yeah, the thing of like the take it or leave it attitude like disappears, you know? Like when you love someone, but they don't love you back, when you're like detached, you're like, oh, not my girl, someone else then. Yeah. But
we throw
then,
in our self-worth in that sort of scenario, right? Like if
yeah,
someone doesn't reciprocate, you're like, well, why not? What's wrong with me?
yeah,
I mean, maybe nothing. Maybe they just don't.
yeah. But it's so hard to like comprehend it.
Yeah, it's
It's,
you teeter on the balance of what's wrong with me versus, and then you fall into, okay, it must be something wrong with you.
How could you not love me? I've been so good to you.
Yeah.
probably it's probably because you couldn't love yourself, you know. Oh
I
my
never
God.
liked you anyway.
Yeah,
I never loved you at all. I was just
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah,
Vito, I mean, some of the other stuff you pointed out about people are apprehensive to trust because it feels hopeless that everything's just the way it is and losing control. And it's like, seen from this perspective, those reactions are just more waves splashing in the river. And so is the joy, whatever joy there is to be experienced, is also just waves splashing in the river. And
yeah,
so, like, this process of seeing the whole thing at once, it's just a process of, oh, here's what's happening, here are all my reactions to it, and it's just activity happening. And
there are two things I want to like point. The two concepts, right? One is by Alan Watts. So when I was like going through like girl crush thingy, papa papa, there was like a lecture called "Trust the Universe." Yeah, and he's talking about how for you to have control, you have to like trust the things around you. So let's say you're in a powerful place, right? Let's say you're managing an entire company. Yeah, you have to have trust in the people working for you to then manage the company. Let's say you don't trust them, and that will just cause you a lot of anxiety. So there's an element of trusting the universe that gives you a sense of peace, and everything flows. You know what I mean? And this is another concept by Terence McKenna, where he says nature loves courage. And he said that you know that nature loves courage because anytime you act on the courage, the nature removes all the impossible obstacles. You know, there are these two concepts which I kind of like feel like dovetails with each other, where there's an element of trusting the universe as well to show you the next obstacle, the next character building obstacle. You know, but however, the nature does remove the impossible obstacle is where the trust in the universe comes in. I feel that like, oh, this girl rejected me. Okay, it's probably not my girl. It's something. Okay, here's an obstacle, not an impossible obstacle, something I can overcome. But when I do overcome it, there's like a greater treasure beyond, And I feel like the universe flows in that kind of way, where it's like obstacle where it reveals more of who you are, a character, creative character building obstacle. You know what I mean?
um,
No.
so the first point, I think I remember Alan Watts talking about the delegation nature of things, right? That there's the more you delegate, you're actually in line with how the universe really works. It's all delegated. And so you can find the peace in the flowing. In terms of courage, I don't know that I see it as much as obstacle based, because as soon as you embrace the concept of an obstacle, you're embracing the concept of self, other,
Oh
object.
yeah,
You're in the duality.
yeah,
And so for me, I think a lot of this spiritual path, the courage comes from just letting go, right? Letting go of these things, that the ways I used to think about myself, or things that I need to have, things I thought I needed to keep away. And so the courage to say, what if I allowed this in? Or what if I didn't chase this? What if I spent my time doing other stuff instead of chasing after things that I've always thought I wanted? Yeah, to me, it's been the courageous aspect of it, I think. I don't know.
mm,
Well, courage is often brought up in times of being fearful, and to be courageous is to act in spite of fear.
yeah,
And so I could definitely see an element of trust, because at the very least, it's a trust in yourself.
yeah. Wow, that's such a great way to put it. Courage is really like you do trust yourself to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
despite what the external circumstances is. Oh no, you're going to die and stuff like that.
And somebody who sees perfectly into the nature of everything. I don't know that fear is part of it, and if it is part of it, they just see it from a detached place. It's kind of like love extinguishes fear, and when you can look around and see
Yeah,
everything as yourself, you have that love for things, and you're not
Mhm.
you're not
yeah.
clinging to yourself, your life, or whatever. And so things that look really courageous for these enlightened people, it's possible that fear just doesn't arise, if you're acting from a place of just unconditional love.
Byron Katie makes a distinction between suffering and pain. You know, I think I think you can I think you can remove the suffering by letting go. But the pain, the residual pain could still be there. Your body could still, it's like a capacitor, your body still holds on to the pain, but you could not suffer through the pain. You know what I mean? The element of suffering would
Mm-hmm.
be removed. And that's, I feel, is an important distinction between pain and suffering. Because you would still be at peace, even though your body is suffering. Even the body is in pain, I mean. You know? I feel that's a
Yeah.
distinction there.
I agree that about the point of love distinguishing fear. Watts has a bit where he says, someone asks him, well, if I am everything, or if I am God, then if this place caught on fire, I would feel scared for my life, that I was going to die, and in that moment, I would feel a lot less like God. What about that? And Watts's reply is well, we often will scare ourselves for entertainment purposes, and it's a very uh, weird answer at first, right? Because like you think, why would I set a building on fire just for entertainment? Um, and I think that all of these things, like the deeper down we get into our examples, I think something, Rave, that you mentioned at the very beginning about people who are considered like the fathers of Taoism, like the Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi. Um, they were in some way jokesters, and they were very exaggerant in their teaching. And so seeing fear as like a form of entertainment may not always apply, but I do think that it does highlight the fact that all of our fear is sort of imposed by us. It's sort of managed by us in a way. Like we do sincerely go to the movies or to do something, to a haunted corn maze, to just freak ourselves out, because there is some part of us, for some of us, that really enjoys that. They enjoy the thrill. I mean, the other side of like this spectrum of experience are like the adrenaline junkies, like people who like climb rocks. Well, I mean, like with no, Nina, my time in Colorado, the first time I went, I saw people climbing with no gear or anything, just free climbing.
Free climbers.
I was like, oh my gosh, because like just one mistake and they're gone, but they love it, you know.
Yeah.
And so when I hear Watts talk about like we do it for entertainment, I'm like, well, I could probably think of an example where that's not true, but then there's these guys climbing on rocks without any gear who were just like, yeah, this is the best.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's all in some out of our control, but I think I would argue more than we realize within our control. There's a regulation of fear, of self-preservation and protection. And while it's all maybe necessary and well and good, I think that it's just understanding that that is within our realm of decision, and definitely deserves some awareness in some form.
What other concepts are there in the book that he explored? You said it's a long chapter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one that I really liked in retrospect here, he starts to point out differences between Buddhism and Taoism. And one theme that I've seen come up in lots of places is this gradual versus sudden insight, which really just means, Buddhism, traditional Buddhism especially, has this sort of outlook on the process of awakening, that it takes a lot of effort over a long period of time and it very slowly happens. We sort of touched on this before, and I threw out the analogy of like fruit ripening on a tree slowly but then falling suddenly. But there's certain traditions, Taoism being more this way, that characterize it as sudden. Like you can understand immediately and forever. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And this is much more the flavor of Zen, which Zen is really just like a blending of Taoism and Buddhism in early China. And pointing out, and it's easy to forget this, that the early Zen masters really almost denounced meditation as like frivolous, which I find very interesting.
I liked when he was talking about Taoist that's meditating, and that I think he described it, related it to cats. Just sitting, watching, no goal. Then when they're tired of sitting or they feel like they want to go hunt or do something else, they just get up and go. There's no punishment for like how long they sat there for. That's something that I've struggled with meditation. You feel like you're supposed to like complete the duration or, reach a goal too with it. I think that's like I think he mentions that too, about when people started in the Western world, started really picking up meditation, and they just went so hard at it. Looking for I think he described it like instant Zen. Like instant coffee.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Go.
There's such a delicate balance, and this is, I think, the concept of wise effort in Buddhism, that like if you're not doing anything, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you're like making a self-help project about it and like straining, struggling, like that's too much. That's too much effort. And I think that's a point that gets lost, especially in our Western conditioning. That's how we feel like progress is made. If there's no pain, there's no gain, right?
Yeah.
But Taoism, the way he characterizes it, seems to be even different from this. So, like, the teachers I've listened to say that, you know, when you start to feel pain in your body while meditating, it's not that you should sit through that to be a good meditator. It's that right there, that experience is a like really valuable opportunity to learn something about the way it is. Because yes, you could move, that pain could go away from you moving. But the logic is that there's going to be times in your life where pain comes and there's no easy thing you can do to get rid of it. So by not moving, you're giving yourself the opportunity to see this pain, to allow it in, and to try to work with it from an internal perspective. And so seeing it from that way is a more of a learning experience. And he sort of characterizes this, that Taoists will meditate for like the joy of doing so. But when it's time to stop, you stop. And yeah, I don't know if that's a true fundamental difference in the approach, or it's just like the way things are worded slightly differently across the traditions that cause confusion.
I think that's a really so like what you're touching on reminds me of all things, something that I saw in an episode of Midnight Gospel, where they basically have an episode that demonstrates how we have tools. And I mean, Ram Dass talks about this. Like, we all have like a certain system or tools that we invest in that will help us, I guess, become free, right? And like, I really like the note about meditation in this book and the Taoist perspective, whereas I feel like a lot of other takes on meditation is that like you must do it twice a day, or it's very prescriptive, right? And it's there's a lot of measurements of like what's happening. Like your point about pain rave is so like key, because like what would a typical Westerner go through like internally? What would their internal dialogue be if they were to feel pain while meditating? I mean, my immediate thought is they would think, well, I'm doing something wrong. Or if I'm a really good meditator, there is no pain. You know,
Sure.
like there's just levels and levels of measurement that are applied to this practice that's supposed to free you, to a point where it could almost be seen as a crutch. Because really, like, if there is like this unity that we've touched on and there's this oneness, the meditation is no more a part of anything else. Like, you know, you people start to I feel like once you get into meditation, you learn about all these forms of meditation and you experience meditation, the more you realize that everything can be meditation. There is not
Yeah.
like like, you know, there's sitting. And for me growing up, I accidentally found that like a meditation in mowing grass. And you know, it was I've had so many thoughts about this, like where the lawnmower was sort of like a gong. It was a constant noise that pacified my brain, and it kept the outside world from really entering in. And like the action of mowing is just so repetitive. So I kind of like found meditation in this very conscious, somewhat alert state. And so I think like my whole point is, um, you know, I really appreciate like this point in the book and this Taoist take on meditation, just kind of being like, if you feel like doing it, do it. But if that's what everything becomes about, then I mean that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Vito's point. Like, how do you know when you're flowing and when you're not? Like, you know, are you flowing more when you meditate? Well, I mean, isn't everything supposed to be some sort of like unified, non-separate thing? So technically, I should be just as present and just as being outside of meditation as in. Like, there's really not a difference. It's just our mindset going into those things. Like, I am holier or more enlightened or more positive in this meditation. And it's not to say there's anything wrong with meditation at all. I meditate frequently, but I meditate a lot less after reading this take and realizing what a lot of my meditation was for before learning this.
I feel
Yeah.
anytime you do something that you really like, you get into this like flow state. I think that's
Hmm.
that's pretty meditative, you know.
Exactly. I 100% agree.
That's
I
like
think Alan
meditation
Watts.
channeled into something useful. Yeah. What were you saying, Ray?
I think Alan Watts had a quote where he's like, "Anytime you're doing something for the sake of doing it and you're not attached to the outcome, that's meditation." You know,
Mm-hmm.
can be applied to anything. That was one of my big insight moments at my first retreat. Was like, you sit down in the hall, you do your formal meditation, and then you go walk to the dining hall to eat. And there were times where I was walking right behind the teacher. This guy was just incredible. And it's like he's walking very slowly, and I just had this realization: like he's still meditating. He is absolutely present with everything that's going on right now. And it's just a mind blowing experience of like this practice doesn't need to stop. Like walking from one place to another, you're still in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're just doing something. Your body's doing something else. That's all that's really changing. And then, yeah, to touch on like the motivation part of it, one of the key parts of the practice that these teachers at least teach is like, you're settling your bodies, settling your mind and your body. And then one of the things that they have you do is point out, like, find the joy of like what it's like to not have a mind that's all over the place and distracted and stuff. And the more you tune into that joy of like the settledness, that's what like makes the process of coming back more in line with a better motivation of like, this is what I want to be doing, not like, oh, I should be meditating.
Yeah.
But like, this feels good. I'm gonna keep doing it. If I have nothing going on, I'm just gonna go sit for however long. Ram Dass has a line where it's like, when you start, it's like, oh, I should really stop washing the dishes so I can meditate. And then when you get further into it, I should really stop meditating so I can wash the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds familiar for me.
And even Watts has a bit about washing dishes. He's like the trick to washing dishes, and it really applies to a lot of things. Is that you only have to wash one dish, and it's a really good parallel to how we approach
Yeah.
life. Like when we go to wash the dishes, you're like, I have to wash so many dishes, and often in our mind, it's held that we have to wash them all at once. Like we have to do so much to do, but when you really look at it, no, you just have to do one. Like you just have to wash one dish, maybe a few times, but just one. And there's a lot, even with work. I've used this. I have so many things thrown at me sometimes where I am just completely overwhelmed and I'm lost. Like I have no idea how to prioritize what's on my plate, and it always helps. Like, well, I can only do one thing at a time. Truly, I can only do one of these at a time. Well, and I just write them out on a list. Sometimes I don't even worry about prioritizing. I just write out what I have to do in like a single file list. And there's something about that, like realizing that the objective may be large, but the process is uniform in a way. It's one thing at a time that connects to the next thing, to the next thing. There's a lot of I've gotten out of that.
I think that ties into Wu Wei, no? Because I think really Wu Wei is really like it's one thing at a time and then you're flowing like that, rather than doing something in a confused state of mind. Oh, I'm doing this, and once you're done with that, the next steps kind of shows itself. I kind of have this thing where in my life, if anyone believes in God or the universe or whatever, you know how it works. It works like a GPS. We all uh, we all are looking for a map. Okay, here's the starting point, here's the ending point, and this is how we're going to get from start to end. Yeah. But the universe doesn't work that way. It shows you step one, yeah, and it waits for you to do step one. And once you did it, it'll show you step two. And then it waits for you to do step two. And it's like a GPS, it says take left, go straight, take right, and it'll get you to the destination. However, I feel most of the people don't even start the journey because they would ask the question, right? Okay, if I take left here, how would that get me to my destination? I don't get it. But I feel that's something that's beyond our human mind. Like, for example, in my life, when I was in 2014, I was doing magic, right? Like card tricks, whatever. and I don't know why. This is that. But then that led me to have this desire of wanting my own style of speaking, of performing, stuff like that. So I was like researching what is style and stuff like that. Till I came across a guy who had style, not performing banks. He was a public speaker. So I asked him, "Yo, how do you perform your style?" That led me to Toastmasters. Yeah. Now I learned public speaking because of Toastmasters. But then that led me to like wanting to start my YouTube channel, which now I had the confidence for after doing the Toastmaster. Yeah. So then I started my YouTube channel, and then after starting my YouTube channel, I had it then now I thought, oh, this YouTube channel is going to be everything, but now it's actually like a training ground for me to like explain myself better in a more appealing
Mm.
way. Yeah. But I wouldn't have gotten here if if you told me today, oh, by performing magic you'll get you here, you can never have guessed. You know, oh, you perform magic and you get here. It's so hard to see the route, but looking back, it's so obvious. Oh yeah, it's what's going on. You know what I mean? So I feel
Yeah.
in that there's like an essence of Wu Wei even in this, where you just do like one thing at a time and the next thing kind of like shows itself and eventually all the dishes are done.
Takes trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to trust the
um,
universe, yeah. Which is
I,
hard.
I I don't know if it was a line in this book, but it seems like a law of the universe of like you don't get what you want by aiming at it. Um, Especially,
Mm,
I mean, happiness is probably the prime example. Like if you're trying to be happy, I feel like that just brings in so much anxiety of like, is this working? Everything I'm trying to do. Okay, am I happier now than I was before? And it's like all of that activity, just like it's like I heard an analogy like you're constantly ripping, trying to grow a carrot and ripping it out of the ground to see if it's growing over and over.
yeah.
Like you just have to like create conditions that are supportive, sort of take your mind off the end goal, be present with what you're doing, and allow it to develop.
Oh, that's exactly what he says about outwitting the devil in that uh,
Oh, I
lecture
love
you
that.
linked, Rave. He
I
said like
love
because like
that.
the minute you like
Oh,
leave town, it alerts all your creditors. So it's like, hold on, where are you going? Like you have this debt to
Yeah.
pay, and
yeah.
and so it's he
Mhm.
also puts it in the way of like the person says, I'm not going to drink all next year, and
Yeah.
immediately alerts the devil to say, oh,
Yeah.
you're going to drink every day that year
Yeah.
actually. And the real way to approach that is to just say, well, today we're not going to, but tomorrow we'll address that when we get there. But you have like a secret intent that I'm never going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where the concept of
Beating a,
Satori comes in, like sudden realization. Yeah. It's because it's sudden because you cannot notify. I love that speech by Alan Watts. It's so dear because it makes so much sense. It's like we always like alert the devil, and the devil always outwits us. It's like a salesman. Oh yeah, no, 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 you can stay in this room just one more month, yeah, and next month you can leave. Wait, really? Next month? Yeah, next month you can leave. Tomorrow you can leave, but the tomorrow never comes. But when you wanna leave, you just leave. Don't tell anything. Don't think anything. You just leave, and it's like a beauty in that we just change without notifying your devil.
Yep. And the only way you can do it is
yeah,
Not even
beating a
thinking
drum
about
in
doing
exactly.
it.
search of a fugitive.
Yeah, because when you think about it, you notify the devil, right? You just be the other way. No thinking, no feeling. It just not even like, oh, I became this, I changed. No, nothing like that. Any thought is just like a red herring, right? And it's so bizarre. I feel like I feel there's a difference between this and I feel something that also gives a very similar effect is the hero's journey, right? Where you go through trials and tribulations, a lot of suffering, and after the suffering, you kind of use that as an excuse. You know what, devil? I've had enough. I've suffered enough. Now I'm gonna just leave. Yeah, and then they just leave. But I feel you don't have to have suffering to just change. You can just change to whoever you want to change. But then I feel that the society always expects an excuse. Oh, so okay, so what led you to become this amazing person? And they expect a story. Expect like a very inspiring story which is where they overcome their fear, cross 7 mountains, cross 7 seas, and now they're like a prince. Nah, you just be the prince. No story, no nothing, nothing required. But it's so hard for us to grasp because we are brought up in this culture where a story is kind of stories is a currency of human relationship. So it's bizarre that way.
Yeah, it's funny that guy Jim Newman I linked a while ago, who seems to have some pretty deep level of insight, refuses to tell a story. Everyone asks, "So what did you do to get here?" He's like,
really?
Yeah, he's like, stories just exist in the present. It's not like, if I tell a story, it'll give you the impression that things unfolded over time in a cause and effect way, but things are just as they are. Like he just holds fast to that view. Really funny. But yeah, I can share like my experience of like giving up your ideas of what you're going to do and just doing it. Was another thing at this meditation retreat. I think it's like really structured to be supportive of this. Like you go into this and it's like you're there for however many days, and there's like however many hours a day structured meditations. And so like my first time going in, I was carrying some anxiety of like, can I meditate that long? Of like, okay, I have this many more sits to go. I've done it for this long. If I've done it this long, I can probably do it. I can probably make it. It's like telling a teacher that, and he's kind of like laughing, and it's just like, he just pauses and he's just like, just ease, the word ease, and take that. And it's like this whole flipping that happens when you're like, almost cliche to say, but like stop counting the meditations and make the meditations count. And it's like when like all that activity, all those thoughts, that's like the analogy to the devil. Of like, can you really do this? Are you sure? Like, what did you sign up for? But then when you're just doing it, when you're outside walking, it's like, there's just a tree here and it's really pretty, and it's like, you forget all that other stuff about, can I do this long? It's just like one moment at a time. And so it's like really demonstrated to you that when you take that approach, how much things just open up because you're just present with what's in front of you. And I think there's a saying that like the present moment only takes a tiny amount. You hold up your fingers to show like a tiny bit. Present moment only takes that tiny bit. That's it.
That reminds me of that Zen story where where there's a Zen monk, and the student asks him like, what is Buddha or what is enlightenment like, and he always holds up a finger. And so no matter who comes, so and they ask you what is enlightenment, they always like he holds up his pointer finger pointing at the top, yeah, like showing one, yeah. So he does this couple of times, and this guy's seen this his student has seen his master do that for years, yeah. And then one day the master goes to like restroom or something, and like a guest comes, and he asked him what is enlightenment to the student. The student has seen like the master do that, so he also says, you know what, I know what it is, and he just like points the finger at one, right? The master like runs in, takes a sword and cuts the finger, and he's like, yo, what, why did he cut my finger? And this guy's suffering, right? And he's like, quick, what is enlightenment? And he like tries to like put the pointer finger out up, but there'll be nothing. And that's the story. And at that moment the guy got enlightened. He lost a finger though. But yeah, I got enlightened. It's really funny though. You know what I mean? There's something where there's something where you expect nothing to be there. It's very interesting how it works.
That reminds me of the Zen story, where what's his name?
Suzuki.
No, founder of Zen Buddhism. What was his name?
Bodhidharma?
Maybe. I remember the story. I'm a little bit fuzzy on the names. I'm definitely feeling that vaccine right now.
Oh, I had vaccine minded this week too.
There's Bodhidharma,
Yeah,
there's Dogen, there's Suzuki.
it might have been Bodhidharma, but like when he was first approached by someone wanting to be his student. I mean, he sat outside of like a cave or something like for a very long time because he wanted to become enlightened. And there was a point where he was like, like, teach me how to pacify my mind. And he's like, well, bring your mind out and I'll pacify it. And he's like, and then immediately he was like, I don't know where my mind is. He's like, there, it's pacified.
Yeah.
I think that is Bodhidharma.
Bodhidharma, yeah, it is Bodhidharma.
I always like that story. I think he actually does cut the hand off the man too.
Damn.
There's something gets cut off. I can't remember what it is, but
Damn, that is so intense, dude. Like, yeah. Just cuts off.
There was one. I don't know if it's the same story, but it's the master doesn't want to see him, and then the student cuts his own hand off to show how sincere he is.
Yes,
He's like,
yes.
look how serious I am.
What?
And then the master, like, yeah, whatever he does.
He basically doesn't want to be bothered. He's like, leave me alone, go away.
Yeah,
He's a hermit.
yeah. Zen's funny because they're just like jerks sometimes, but in a funny way.
Yeah, they kind
Well,
of
because
like
they have a
scream
belief
as
I can't
well.
be any other way. They're like, this is how I am. How could I be something
Yeah.
else?
They scream at your face as well, yeah.
Oh, man. I had a couple people outside of book club note how long our book clubs are getting, and I personally really like it. But I thought it was interesting. Just like it was noted by people who just know that I do this,
Wait, what
and
do you
I
mean?
really like just I have friends who I talk about this book club with. I tell them, like, this
Yeah.
is something that I do, and they've just noted, because if we have plans or something, I'm usually like, hey, like, I'm gonna be a little bit late, or I don't make plans until later,
Yeah.
and they've just noted, it's like, you're in that a whole lot more now, and I really that's kind of picked up with this book, I feel like,
Mm.
and I think
Yeah.
it's a testament to like how much is in here and how much that we really have like uncovered and dug into. I really like that.
Mm. Yeah. When we hit like 100 subscribers, let's do like a live stream for like, I
Oh
don't
yeah.
know. Yeah, 3 hours live
there,
stream. Yeah. There you go.
there you go. I bring this up because I want to make sure just before we get any further, because I'm happy to go. I usually have a hard cut off at noon, but I did
Yeah.
want to make sure that we discussed the fact that this book is almost done.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sneaky. Because I feel like this is really the most we've talked about a book, the longest we've kind of like met over a book, and this is really one of the shorter ones.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works out. So yeah, we have
This.
one more chapter, the day virtuality, and then we'll need a new book. So
I have a new suggestion for a new book that I really love, that you all will also like a lot. It's a book called The End of just give me 1 second. It's by a guy called Adya Shanti. Anyone knows him? Even I don't know him. Just know him from this
what's
book.
the name of the book?
The End of Your World by
Of
Adya
Your
Shanti.
World.
It's an amazing. It's a no nonsense book about what it is like post enlightenment. Guy's like super
Huh,
direct. Like doesn't like mess around or anything. Just says what it is, and it's really good.
nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that can definitely be. So I figured we'd do the same thing we did
Yeah,
last
yeah,
time,
yeah. We'll
where
do a poll
we have
thing. Yeah,
a
that's my
we have a
recommendation.
poll.
Mhm.
I was going to re-include Man Search for Meaning because it did get a vote, and I want to,
Yeah.
if someone has a specific interest, I want to give everyone the opportunity to
Yeah,
vote
yeah.
in comparison to whatever's offered. So we already have another suggestion, End of Your World. So I just wanted to put a note out to keep in mind if there's
Yeah.
something. I mean, I love this trail of Taoism discussions that we've just happened upon. So, like, if there is anything like specific that comes out of this, and it's not about Taoism, that's totally fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we should follow curiosity and whatever questions we have, because I think that's what
Yeah.
I mean. It's led us to this where we are right now, and so I think we can, no pun intended, but you just trust how things are going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, just trust how things are going. Wu Wei life.
That sounds like it should be a T-shirt.
Yeah. But yeah, in this, I was listening to this, and it's really, it's like the emptiness that Zen talks about. I've kind of, I kind of get it, kind of get what they're pointing to. It's like when the awareness becomes aware of itself, I think then you like see become aware of emptiness, what they call mu or something in Zen, which in that book he like talks about. It is very eye opening. But yeah, letting go. Yeah, so letting go really is just letting go. But I realize you can only let go when you don't have any attachments. Also, one more thing I'm realizing is that you cannot let go of pain, because pain is a consequence of a expectation or something that is supposed to go a certain way, or a perceived sense of lack, you know. So you cannot let go of pain directly. So you have to let go of the fact that you lack something, and then the pain will disappear. Because pain is the symptom, not the cause, and you can only let go of the cause, not the symptom. You know what I mean? And
There's this
mhm.
line out of a philosophy book that I like is that we don't dislike pain because it's bad. Pain is bad because we dislike it. And I
Mm,
think there's a lot. I mean, this is why sitting with some pain present in meditation is such a can be an incredible experience, because you learn what it is about pain that's so painful. Even the word pain just has that negative connotation built in. Um, but you can learn the ways in which it's just activity. It's activity that we feel like shouldn't be happening.
mhm.
It's the expectations that you sort of point to that we bring to that experience. The resistance, the mind burns its energy resisting that which is present,
Yeah.
is when it's wrapped up in suffering.
Yeah, the thing about, yeah, because pain is a symptom and we're all in a pursuit of curing the symptom, but not the cause. No one ever takes the time to look into their identity or anything. Everyone wants a technique, a method, a structured routine that when they do that, the pain disappears. And but no matter how much you treat the symptom, if you don't treat the cause, the symptom will keep appearing. Like
You're Go ahead.
there's
Keep going.
no there's like a meditation called the holotropic breathing. Yeah, where it's like Wim Hof breathing. Yeah, where you over oxygenate your blood and your mind kind of goes numb, and you kind of like lose consciousness and you become more aware of the awareness. It's easier to become aware of the awareness. Yeah, I did that. You feel better for like an hour till the pain and anxiety, everything just comes back, and I feel everything is like and then I try to like let go of the cause. Oh, where am I getting the sense of narcissistic sense of pleasure from? What am I expecting that is not what is? What am I trying to control that I can't control? What in this world I'm trying to control that I can't control? Stuff like that, right? Then I let go of that and I stop suffering. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't suffer anymore. But then the pain still was there, which is when I realized, okay, the body is like a capacitor. So even if you stop suffering, the body like kind of holds on to some pain. So then now the meditation, the breathing techniques and all help to like clear that out. And now you feel good. And I so what I've realized is like a mix of both. You have to let go of the cause, and you have to let go of the lingering symptoms after you remove the cause through like breathing exercises like meditation or deep inhale and exhale or progressive muscle relaxation, stuff like that. You know what I mean? This is what I'm realizing. What are you saying, Pooch?
Um, you mentioned something that bridged a thought I had earlier, and it's from the video that Rave shared, where people want like a structured routine, and they basically want a list of like steps to take to get somewhere. And this is really interesting to me after like watching that video and like hearing this again. But Watts basically lays out where people often let's say you have a person who says I've obtained this, and this is usually in like a spiritual enlightenment type of context, and they're like I've achieved this, and this is how I did it, and people look to just replicate what someone else has done,
Yeah.
and often especially I guess like on the topic of Taoism, so someone's like I just this is what I did nothing, like there's not really much to it, I just was. And people will say, well, you didn't really do anything extraordinary, you didn't do anything that was like very diligently hard and determined to do.
Yeah.
And we often measure effort, like if you're not working hard, there's no way you're gonna get something huge out of your effort. Or I guess in this case, like by not doing anything, you're not going to get anything. um and so people often shoot down what is often just very easy, like just sort of like this acceptance and that letting go, and they want a very hard routine or practice. We were talking about the meditation, where it's like you have to meditate for 2 hours a day, and if you can't do that, you need to work your way up to be able to do that, and then once you get to that level, there's going to be another level you're going to have to learn to do. And we sort of do all these things and are assured by the fact that we did these things, and say that these things mean that we must be further along than we were before. um, and it's a very game-like approach.
Yeah.
you know
I feel this entire thing about spirituality is really just letting go of stories so that you can see what is. There are so many stories that we believe. Oh, there's an earth. I'm in this earth. There are other people like me. I'm inside this body. The body is inside a mind. Whatever. And
Mhm.
I have a family, have friends. I'm born. All the stories that is not true in your what is experience. In your direct experience right now, that's just a story that you're born, here's an earth, blah blah blah. You never like saw earth. I'm not denying the fact that earth exists. I'm just trying to like highlight how many stories we do believe that just because someone else told us and we never really verified through our direct experience. And that's a huge trap, because your direct experience, the ways science and society is like structured, your direct experience is sacrificed for the collective subjective direct experience. For example, let's say you're walking on the road. You, me, Boots, and Rave, Nina, everyone's walking on a road, right? I see a UFO. I tell you guys, yo, there's a UFO. You three don't see it. And so that implies that the UFO is not real, and I'm hallucinating. So my direct experience is also not real, because the collective subjective direct experience, that is all of you three, you experience something different. You know what I mean? So my direct experience get compromised, and I feel this mechanism where we sacrifice our direct experience because we believe something else to be true is, I feel, like the biggest trap in this entire book, which we are trying to
Yeah,
like escape.
there's an element of ignorance that Watts talks about with this stuff. The childlike mind.
Mm, yeah. And so crazy. And all I feel like Zen does is just to puts you to what is, till you just give up all the stories. And then once you give up all the stories, you just see what is.
I
Because
really
if
like the way
Mhm.
Zen, sort of getting back to what Boots was talking about
Yeah,
in terms of people feel like they need to work hard in order to earn their insights. So if you guys are familiar with the Zen koan tradition,
yeah,
where essentially masters pose some type of questions to the students, they need to go off and meditate on it and then come back and give their answer, usually in the form of like some type of demonstration or performance.
t-
And so like what typically happens is the first few koans are meant to be solvable and to give the students this like false sense of really like ego achievement, like, oh, I'm a good meditator, I'm good at this Zen stuff, and so I really feel like I accomplished something, I'm getting this spirituality stuff. And then of course they come along and the master gives them a koan, and no matter what they do, the master says, "Nope, not it. You didn't get it. Go back." And the student just gets more and more frustrated. I thought I was good at this, blah blah blah. Like they start despairing, and then like I guess it just so happens that like a lot of students report like the moment they give up, like I'm done with this, like I quit or whatever, like I don't get it, is like the moment that they become enlightened. It's like they realize that they never had any control over any of it, blah blah blah. And then the master says, "Ah, now you see."
Nina, just letting you know you're on mute, by the way. So if you're like unconsciously speaking or something, that happens to me all the time.
I don't know if I don't see her on mute.
I'm not on mute.
Oh, you're not? Oh, damn. Okay. In my okay. I was looking at the OBS thingy. No mind. But yeah, that is like, yeah, the game is, you can't tell too many stories. The game needs to be really simple, and it needs to like get out of that's why I feel like the concept of letting, I feel like a life itself gives you enough suffering where you don't have to like meditate and do this extra stuff, like if you meditate on life, you kind of like get enlightened. Also, there's another interesting thing. The way Christ got enlightened and the Buddha got enlightened, people look at that and they say, oh, I want to become like Christ, I want to become like Buddha, you know what I mean? But I feel everyone blossoms into a different flower. However, just because we know the Christ or Buddha to be true, we kind of we want to become like them, oh, I want to become a Buddha, enlightened like a Buddha, you know but however, I feel everyone enlightens differently and express their enlightenment differently, and I feel Buddha and Christ are just so famous just because they were true to who they were, their soul. They were authentic to who they are. And I feel in this pursuit there's a loss of authenticity of ourselves as well, where we sacrifice our true being because we think we have to be more Buddha like or we have to be more Christ like. However, I don't feel that's true.
I think it's very deeply embedded into psychology to compare a very
Rival.
deep level of how I'm doing. I only know when I look at how you're doing. Now I can start to get a feeling about that. But like, yeah, the true spiritual path is seeing through that, and like how you're doing is how I'm doing. There's no difference, right? So it's like there are unique manifestations, but it's all one interconnected flowing.
Yeah.
So at that level, the concept of comparing, like it's still a concept, but it's not something that you treat as fundamentally, it is, but it also isn't. That type of paradox.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel everyone enlightens in a different way. Like all the Zen masters, whoever are masters, they all have a different personality. Have different flavor to them. Alan Watts, Ramdas, they're not the same. But I was listening to them in the time. Oh, I want to be more like Alan Watts. Actually, but the true journey is I have to be more of who I am, which is a process of uncovering.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's all you could be. But I think do it.
I was going to ask a totally unrelated question.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
This name that is brought up so often in the chapter that starts with a C and is often mentioned aside Lao Tzu, is that the same character that is referred to Zhuangzi? Is that the same, or are those two different things?
That's Zhuangzi.
Because I've seen Zhuangzi start with a Z, but I don't know if that's just some sort of translation equivalent thing.
That has been my understanding. It's the same thing how Lao Tzu sometimes there's a Z and there's an S. Like it's.
Okay.
But my understanding is that the CH. I'm guessing you're talking like the CH. What is it? CHUANG. Let me look at. But yeah, I'm pretty sure because like especially when he mentions anytime. I mean, like Lao Tzu's very often brought up with Zhuangzi, and we even saw Zhuangzi in the Tao of Pu, so that's why I am assuming that that's the same.
Mm.
He was sort of seen as a translator's too strong of a term, but he sort of took what Lao Tzu did and he said, "Well, this is what he means." But then he also had the same like element of Lao Tzu being like very exaggerant, playful, basically.
I have the book Zhuangzi. I think is there just one book? I don't know. I have a book called Zhuangzi.
Do you have a library?
I haven't read it yet, so that's
You
all
never
I know.
showed us your library.
I have a bookshelf with books on it. I don't know what I would call it a library.
Yeah, it's close enough. Yeah. Send a
There was
picture.
that period in the
Yeah, I think that's
in
it.
the Alan Watts subreddit where everyone was posting their book stacks. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I don't
That's
know
why
if
I
Alan
any
Watts
got
watched
book
around.
too.
these videos too. Yeah. Alan was subreddit. We have like one subscriber now. So exciting. So yeah. So
Yeah, when I search
I'm sorry. Go on, Rafe.
CHUANG, it just brings up the Z, and it looks like to be the same person. So I think it is.
That's always been my assumption. But it can be very confusing to hear it pronounced and then to read it because I mean, based on the language I know, it's not pronounced that way. Well, does anyone have anything else to note or they want to dig into in the last few minutes?
I just really liked this one part, and I think the final line was the tranquility and disturbance. It was just a story about teaching this man kind of just let go of certain things one by one. It was saying tranquility and disturbance is perfection. And I just really liked how that sounded, honestly. Nothing really profound about it. I just liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think I remember. Do you remember what page that was?
92. It started on 91.
Yeah.
Right at the end of
Yes,
91.
I remember this.
Yeah, 9 days it happened. I was slightly envious about that.
Well, then they go on to another passage that was a
Or
little
it takes
longer.
9 years, yeah.
Yeah.
The power of a
I really
teacher.
like that one.
Oh, that makes me think of
And-
something I really liked. What you bring up, the tranquility and disturbance. He mentioned in this chapter about salt in a stew, and he was referencing failures. And I just had a thought, like, what would it be like to have a society that approached failure as seasoning of who you are, instead of the failing of who you are? Because I mean, you can't have any sort of, I mean, failure is the foundation for all of your improvement, all your accomplishments. Really, if you look at it a certain way.
Yeah. I like thinking of it in that way. It's like seasoning.
And we can get really salty. Just kidding.
I think the other piece was when they're telling the story of the drunken man. He fell out of the cart and he experienced suffering in a different way. How he wasn't conscious about falling out of it. maybe not even like entirely present for the pain or anything.
Yeah.
And I think it ended and it said something about here it is. It's on page 97 and it said, and if such security is to be got from wine, how much more is to be got from spontaneity? It is funny the state that you can get in that perspective change when like under the influence.
Feeling invincible.
Yeah, I mean, people say like it's inhibition, it's gone, but there's a lot that just kind of goes, right? You're very courageous, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But then talk about like the polarity of the next day too.
Uh-huh.
The cost of letting go of all of it, and then the next day, all of it comes rushing back, even worse than before.
The whole day's a prisoner to the night before, really. It's like,
I call your anxiety.
yeah. And then you just like, why do I do this to myself? I hate myself.
Just self-loathing all day.
And then
maybe sometimes too.
Go ahead.
Oh,
maybe what?
You're just saying that it's self-loathing one day or maybe 2 days, depending.
Yeah. And I was gonna say we start making promises. I'm never gonna drink again, and then it comes like the devil comes back, like we were mentioning. It's like, okay, well, I'm writing this down for tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember in college, I had a phase where I was drunk rollerblading a lot.
Oh,
nice.
And it's like you feel invincible. Like I had my music playing, and it's like nothing. I fall, but who cares? And then the next day, of course, I'm covered in bruises. And I'm walking. One time I was walking to class, and my friend was like, "Did you see that idiot rollerblading last night?" Like not knowing who it was. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it's funny. Like some people do it skiing, and I've done it skiing before, and it's made me like. I feel great on my skis because my fear is gone. Like I feel fantastic. But it doesn't make me a better skier after that. Like it's not like that experience transcends to the next time I go out. But it's funny if I were able to just consciously let go in like the sober state. I think that it would take that fear way more. But it's just it is an interesting thing.
It's interesting. I did something similar, Rave. I wasn't drunk, but I rode my bike. I purposely rode my bike up several hills on my college campus. And like in one part of me was like, I am so good for putting myself through this sort of workout every morning, going up these hills. But the real reason was because like after my classes were done, I could just ride down hills extremely fast back home, like because my house was just downhill from everything, and I would just fly like zipping through people, irritating probably every single person I came across. But there is something to that, like that invincible. It's very like freeing for a moment. It's very fun. I can't imagine doing it drunk. I mean, that's
I one time
in
got
a way
drunk.
it's impressive, honestly,
Yeah.
especially rollerblading and skiing.
Getting
I'm just
drunk
happy
and
those days
running
are behind
itself
me
is
now.
very pleasurable. Yeah. What
Those
are you
days are
saying, Mimi?
behind me.
Oh yeah.
Those days are behind me. I don't think.
Sober skier now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
haven't
for
tried
sure.
skiing.
Yeah.
I should. I want to learn salsa and I want to learn skiing. So it is on my bucket list. Once I
Salsa
go.
and skiing.
I mean,
Salsa while skiing? I'm just
let's
Yeah.
see. Let's see. That's the next step. I learn salsa, I learn skiing, and then I salsa while skiing. Yeah. But yeah, guys, it's 11:59. Time to
Yeah.
time for the rave poem. You know, closet rave.
the laundry is done.
The laundry
Just
is done.
kidding.
Yeah.
Funny, I wrote to Rave this week and I had listened to that lecture, I think, and I was like, Alan Watts just put me through the rinse cycle.
That's great. Very nice. It feels like that sometimes. I mean, there is a very. We've nailed it with the whole like refreshing. Oh my gosh, my brain is shutting down. Refreshing element to these meetings and talks.
Mhm.
Yeah. I told
I
her
hope you
like
feel
when
better,
you're
dude.
yeah. I told her when you're choosing to listen to Alan Watts lectures in your free time, that's you've ascended a spiritual level.
There you go.
Yeah, I got my vaccine on Wednesday, and I don't know if this was your experience, but I was just like real spacey. Like had a hard time focusing on things the mind didn't want to focus on.
Mm.
Yeah, my first one was fine. I didn't really have much. Just the second one, probably around like midnight or 1 o'clock. I think I had a slight fever. I was definitely like uncomfortable. But I had taken something the night before to help because I was thinking that would happen. And then I woke up and I was okay. And then probably like halfway through this, like, it just hit me, and I'm like, well, good thing that I can just listen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the spaciness is real. Like I don't think I have a fever now, but I'm definitely like my body's tired. So I'm going to rest all weekend.
Yeah.
My workout was this talk. I worked out my brain.
Yeah, it's funny. I had like a really nice. I was like so spacey. I had a really nice meditation. The mind was calm, but it was hard to like do other stuff. I was thinking like I should get one of these before a retreat or something.
To vaccinate before a retreat.
Just a booster shot.
There you
Yeah.
go. Did anyone? I did not. But did anyone have we've been talking about reading something at the very end. It's not a requirement, but I always like to check just in case.
I have something. I can read it. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Let me pull it up. All darkness is a disturbance of light. What is evil but forgetfulness? You need to know the nature of darkness. It is finite. That's it.
Who's that?
It's a.
That's not a
It's not,
Thich
yeah.
Nhat Hanh. That's my guess.
No,
Is it?
It's from the book called
Ah.
Emmanuel's book. Emmanuel's book is the one that Ramdas points to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My guess was also Thich Nhat Hanh. Rave.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
It's, what's
Yeah.
evil but forgetfulness? You know.
That sounds like it comes from him. That's why I
Yeah.
said it.
It does. It does. I think there's something to be said about that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
All right.
it's such a
Go
loving way
ahead,
to look
Vito.
at. No, I feel it's such a loving way to look at darkness. Oh, what is darkness but forgetfulness? Like, yeah, just forgot who you were. Okay, it's fine. But yeah,
It's
that's
very
it.
non-judgmental.
Yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I guess who is watching? Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, thanks everyone for joining this weekend, and have a good weekend. I'm just now remembering. I don't think I will actually be around for the next meeting. I have a wedding, and I
Oh,
I
nice.
think
Your wedding?
it's no, not my wedding. But I have a wedding.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to join, but I'll post an update as soon as I know.
You want to
But
reschedule it to Sunday or something, or is it just too
uh,
much?
well, I'm gonna be traveling. It's a weekend thing, right? Like I'm driving
Yeah.
out and then got to drive back.
Okay.
So of course you all are welcome to meet otherwise, but I will I'll follow up in the channel, just let everyone know. And then just keep in mind, just anytime you think of it, if you have a book that you want to do for the next book after we finish this, just post it, and then like within the
Yeah.
next week I'll post a poll and announce it to the channel. We can all vote and go from there.
All right. Have a nice weekend, guys. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Yep.
See you guys.